Me either. Thank you so much, Rachel and Jeff, for having me here. This is quite an honor to be on the stage. I feel fortunate to have been to every single Astronomy on Tap so far and continue to hopefully do so in the future. Not to mention sharing amazing stage with Dr. Taft and Kraus, and thank you so much for not letting me talk last month, because there's no way I could have followed Fun with Chem. If you weren't here, that was awesome. I tried to find a way to work into my presentation today how to blow something up. Maybe next time, or if you want to come out at the observatory, we might be able to play around with something. But yes, as Rachel said, I am presently the outreach chair of the Austin Astronomical Society. I've been a member for the last 7 years, as well as on their executive committee for that time. And been an amateur backyard astronomer for decades. Some people don't really quite understand what that means. None of this is really that far from the truth. I spent several years in conversations with a supervisor of mine who would ask me on a regular basis if I could tell him what was going on with his astrological sign. And I eventually gave up. Repeat after me, everyone. It's astronomy, not astrology. Thank you. I do firmly actually believe that that's what people like Rachel and Jeff think we do, but maybe just on a slightly bigger scale. I would love to have a telescope like that someday. I actually have brought my first telescope that I ever had with me, so obviously a slight differentiation in size there. And of course, what I really do, which is, observe on a standard size telescope out under dark skies. And just in case you thought I was lying, I actually do still have the picture. And no, I'm sorry, that was a lookalike. I think William Shatner would have been a little bit more gracious to not stalk me. And while I'm not a professional astronomer. I do not have a degree in astronomy or science of any regard. I'm actually have a degree in environmental and ecological design. I have played a professional astronomer on TV, so there's the proof of that there. But it's been a passion of mine my whole life, and I'm very fortunate to be able to do the work I do, both for my own personal purposes, but also for the Austin Astronomical Society. It's a rare opportunity that someone finds a passion that, even though they don't get paid for it, despite what my husband wishes I got paid for it, I do find ways to work it into my everyday life, and I find myself surrounded by amazing people that I get to interact with, observe with, and learn from, and on some rare occasions teach as well. So that brings us to have scope, will observe. What do you need to be an amateur astronomer? Pretty much a pair of eyes and a sky. That's really bare bones minimum. I have a lot of friends who prefer to do what they call naked eye observing. I always thought that sounded kind of dirty. But really, you can see a lot with just your eyes. In fact, you can see the Andromeda Galaxy, which is our only visible object outside of our own galaxy. On a good night, you can see that naked eye, so I think that's pretty awesome. But you don't need a whole lot. Obviously, you can. A lot of us do. Some of us have large scopes. Some of us have our own observatories. Not that I'm naming anyone in this room. But there's various degrees and levels of which you can get involved in amateur astronomy, but it can also be really overwhelming. A lot of terms and words that some people don't know the definitions to, and some of us can barely pronounce. And you find ways to kind of pick up here or there the lingo, so to speak. But that's one of the benefits of having something like the Austin Astronomical Society here in Austin, is an amazing resource for amateur astronomers. This was my first telescope. It's a 60 millimeter, affectionately referred to as the rinky dink. But still got me by. I'm able to see the rings of Saturn. I'm able to see the moons of Jupiter. Obviously, the moon doesn't look much larger in it as it does to naked eye, but you can still see a little bit more detail. But it's a good place to start. And by associating yourself with other amateur astronomers, you learn more. You become more involved in observing, not only for yourself, but also teaching others. Amateur astronomers do everything from personal observing with lists. We do a lot of outreach targeted at children, at adults, pretty much anyone who will stop and listen to us long enough or look through our telescope. How many people out here have actually never looked through a telescope before? Raise your hand. Is that like one person back there? Two, okay, awesome. I'll put the telescope out on the sidewalk, and after the talk we can fix that. But awesome. And how many of you actually have even heard that there's an Austin Astronomical Society? Okay, good. For those of you, we'll talk afterwards. We'll educate and what have you. But what do you need? You know, what really, again, I said, eyes, a sky. You might want a little bit more than that. So, kind of the basis. And I do want to make a note. I'm sorry, I did forget to mention this. Every single image in the background of these may look like Hubble Space Telescope images. They're actually our members, our astrophotographers, our astrosketchers who have contributed their images to this. So just to kind of give you a grand idea of, it's more than just looking through a telescope. It's more than just observing things in the night sky. You know, we have people who take it above and beyond that, and they're quite remarkable artists and photographers in their own right. Let's put that down. So telescope, binoculars, or your eyes. You can start out small. You can start out big. Unfortunately, astronomy is one of those sort of environments where size does seem to matter. And there are certain people, I can tell you, in our society that don't ever let us forget that. Maps, planispheres, these lovely things. I'm kind of old school when it comes to observing, and I think it's sort of like when you start driving, you should learn how to drive a stick shift first. I think when you start doing astronomy, you should go to the basics. Learn how to use your maps. Get yourself a sky atlas. Get yourself a planisphere. Learn the sky. Things like eyepieces, finder scopes, telrads. These are all things that will improve your observing. We tend to get a thing called aperture fever, and so there are some of us that take up second jobs or find ways to sell, organs, blood, or what have you, to get bigger eyepieces. Otherwise, just sort of, your basics. A chair. You're going to be observing a long time. It's nice to be able to sit down and do it. Red light, for those of you who aren't aware, white light in a dark adaptive environment will screw your eyes totally. So we use red lights when we do our observing because that wavelength does not affect us the same way. There are those of us that keep logs of things that we look at. An observing partner is awesome. In fact, I have several here in the audience, including one that I got started off doing observing and had a bigger scope, and that always helps too. I like to think that you don't really need to have a bigger scope yourself, just somebody you know who does and likes to share. But it's, oftentimes an observing partner is great because you want to go, hey, am I looking at the right thing? Come over here, take a look. And you'll go back and forth between telescopes, and that's very helpful. And of course, yes, dark skies, which is quite crucial. We don't have that around here. This is a very urban observing environment, but even my own backyard, I live in North Austin. I have a laundromat right across the way. It blares a bright neon light, but you can still see some things. You can still see things in downtown Austin. You can still see some things in the urban surrounding areas. However, we're fortunate to have, amazing places like McDonald Observatory, I'd say practically in our backyard, but it's Texas, so it's 7.5 hours away, but definitely worth the drive. Let's see. So why do we do what we do? None of that. No fame, prestige. I mean, okay, it's really cool to be standing here being able to talk about this. But we do it because we're passionate about it. Astronomy has always been a passion of mine, and I have found a way that even though I did not pursue science as a career, I have found a way to do what I love and fit it into my time and get a lot out of it. I, like probably many in this room, wanted to be a NASA astronaut, wanted to be the first female on Mars. We have no humans on Mars yet and no space program, so I'd be out of a job right now if I'd taken that route. But doing amateur astronomy, is rewarding in itself. I get great pride in what I do, and it makes you feel humbled. It makes you hopefully have a slightly better sense of who you are in the universe. It's incomprehensible at times, and I think anybody who says they can understand the vast distances, the infinite mass of the universe, is probably had a little bit too much to drink, or doesn't know exactly what they're talking about, because it is a very humbling experience to be looking at something like a globular cluster 10,000 light years away, or things in the millions of light years away, and it kind of puts things in perspective. But it also means that we fall into a category I like to call the 1%. Astronomy is 1% observing, 99% waiting for dark skies. This is actually a graphic of my own. I created the Curse of the Astronomer, and I cannot tell you how many times I've actually encountered this along with my fellow compatriots, where pretty much Monday through Thursday it's gorgeous and clear, and come Saturday it's fire and brimstone, hail, rain. I utilize these resources, as do many amateur astronomers, to check up on the weather. This bottom one, Austin Clear Sky chart, is pretty phenomenal. It gives you a breakdown of every component that could possibly be important to astronomical observing, whether the sky is clear, whether there's clouds, what transparency is like, a lot of technical terms, and also weather and temperature. There's nothing worse than something like humidity to ruin a night of observing. Everything just gets soppy and wet, and it's miserable. But when it does come together, in fact, when all of these people are speaking the same language, that's the time to drop everything, cancel any plans that you have, and get your ass out to dark skies as soon as possible, because it's going to be amazing, and it may never happen again, at least not for 6 or 7 months. And on that note, obviously, because we have kind of bright skies here. This is actually, as of just yesterday, what things are looking like in the area. So you can obviously see that, okay, so red is bad. Getting into blue and gray, slightly better. So this gives you an idea of the kind of impact that lights in Austin and the surrounding areas are having on our observing, and it's why we go the hour and a half outside of Austin to go to the observatory that the Austin Astronomical Society runs. It's why folks who are amateur astronomers are going out 2 hours in distance and building observatories on land, because we can no longer view close into where we live and close into our homes. And this is one of the other elements of amateur astronomy that is near and dear to my heart, as well as pretty much anybody else who observes on a regular basis, is how much light impacts us. So you have within astronomers a sort of a political beast of trying to combat the folks that are trying to lighten up our skies because they think it's safer and better for us, and obviously it's not. So when it gets this bad, we retreat to places like, the Texas Star Party in Fort Davis. If for those of you who have gone to that, that's a phenomenal week-long place. Imagine a place where you get to go for a week and you're surrounded by people, fellow geeks and astronomers that all share your passion. It's kind of cool. And of course, closer in locations, there's star parties all over the world. These are some of the bigger ones, some of the brighter ones. This is actually an image that one of our members took out there, that the Milky Way is so bright you can read by it. It casts a shadow. Those are the kind of dark skies that us amateur astronomers fight for and want to have in a place like this, in a place like Austin. And we do our best. We do our best observing. We do what we can. We do it because we love it, and we do get certain perks out of it. We don't get, written up in newspapers and magazines, but we have something called the Astronomical League, and they have little lists that we can do. I say little, they're actually quite huge and quite expansive, but we get certificates and pins, so there's certain perks to it as well. But mostly, again, it's because we're passionate and because we love an opportunity to see the sky and see the universe in a way that most people we encounter on a daily basis don't get a chance to. I had a really fortunate time when I was much younger I lived back in California in San Francisco and had an opportunity to look through the telescope at the moon of one John Dobson. And, you know, it's rare that we have technology that we have now to be able to see, you know, like the kind of work that Rachel does, the farthest distant galaxies. And the more advanced technology that they get their hands on, the more our technology kind of advances and follows up and behind. So we can do amazing things like take astrophotos like this, or even see something like the moons of Jupiter through a tiny little 2-inch telescope. There's a lot of opportunity out there. There's a lot of things to discover, a lot of things to learn, a lot of things to unlearn. Supermoons, Mars being the size of the moon, that will never happen. If it does, pour yourself a drink, pull up a chair, enjoy the view. It ain't gonna last that long. But you know, it's what I love to do. It's what I love to share with people. And obviously, I'm in a room with fellow compatriots who like the same. So feel free to join us. Feel free to come out. We have a star party this Saturday. I'll be out there. And feel free to ask me any questions you might have afterwards about just being an amateur astronomer, about our society, or come look through the telescope for those two folks back there who haven't had an opportunity to. And thank you for this opportunity to speak with you.
All righty. So we do have time for a couple of questions for MC Squared here. So right over here.
Awesome question.
Repeat the question, please.
Oh, sorry. The question is, what kind of apps would I suggest? The list is endless. There are free apps. I mean, even Google Sky is a great place to start. My kind of go-to lately has been Sky Safari, and not just because one of our members designed it, but it's just amazing for the amount of information and usability it has. Yeah, I mean, you can't go wrong, and I think we actually might even have a page up on our website that has suggestions for different types of apps and what they're utilized for.
Straight ahead.
Yeah, I'm trying to get my wife involved, and I'm wondering where you got the space.
Amazon, and good luck with that. Yeah. It's a rare situation where a husband and wife appreciate astronomy together. A lot of us don't have that luxury, and so we either become solitary astronomers or we have affairs, sky affairs, just at the observatory.
Okay. One more question for MC Squared up here. Let's see.
If you ask a question, you get a glow stick. Come on, people.
One more question. All right, right here in the middle.
When does the Austin Astronomical Society meet?
Awesome question. We meet on the UT campus the second Friday of every month, starting at 6:30.
And sometimes you get to see astronomers talk to you guys. I know I've done that. Dr.
Yes.
Rachel's done that.
Yes.
It's fun. They ask the hardest questions by far.
We really do. We like to try to stump them, and they do an amazing job.
All right, let's thank MC Squared one more time. She'll be around for a bit. And come check out the telescope if it's not cloudy out. I haven't checked in a while. We'll see.